cloud transformation services business globally at IBM. What this means basically is we help clients understand, refine, or define their cloud strategies, but align to specific business objectives. And then execute that strategy with things like moving applications to the cloud, modernizing applications, building new capabilities. What is key to all of this then becomes is how do you transform the operating model that can then create sustained value. So that's the kind of services I offer. Today, I stand here or sit here to be with you. And what I suggest I'll do in the next 20 minutes is share with you how we see some of our clients looking at themselves as digital insurers. What challenges they see in that journey, and when they look at a holistic strategy to address those challenges, what are the kind of outcomes and value they can generate. I'll then tell you what I have learned as being the 4 critical get-rights in that journey. And then we'll close with how you can get started on such a journey yourselves. I hope that's okay as an agenda. Wonderful. So to start off, as we speak to a number of our clients, what they tell us is as they are transforming to become digital insurers, there are 3 priorities they are calling out. One is about NPS. It's quite concerning that in this industry, a lot of companies have got negative NPSs, and there are large companies that have got NPS of 1, whereas actually they're all striving towards having an NPS greater than 60. And a few things emerge from that. One, what is that optimized consumer experience? Am I easy to do business with? Do I have the right kind of platform and capability that allows me to aggregate my products and offerings and allow cross-selling? So those are the kind of things that they are working on. The second dimension of this is around premium growth. And one of the core contributors to premium growth becomes the speed at which you can bring products and services out to the market. And to be able to do that, they are seeing that looking at how to modernize their applications, their technology, becomes a key contributor to that. Not only that, if you modernize the applications, how then should my business process change so that from ideation of a product to that product being used by my consumer on the ground, how is that fastest process going to take place? In some cases, they have achieved doing that in a matter of days, and efficient companies are doing that in a matter of less than 3 months. Now, the third dimension in all of this is, of course, cost. And IT and transactional cost is a fundamental contributor to that entire cost profile. And here, what we are seeing is not only reducing cost, but they are trying to shift the balance between saying, I spend 70% of my costs in just running what I have today, and I spend 30% of trying to do new stuff. But those that are transforming towards becoming digital insurers are swapping that around, are getting closer to 30% on just running the estate and spending most of their time, energy, and cost in being able to generate new capability out in the marketplace. And I'll speak to you a little more about how that is the case. It was very interesting. We were having a conversation with the chairman of a very large bank in Europe. And she said to her audience, much like this, she says, we are actually a technology company. We just happen to have bank written on our front door. That was quite fascinating. It demonstrated to the rest of their own team the importance of that technology that underpins it. Now, we all know it's quite easy to talk about digital insurer and NPS and cost, but there are some very real challenges that all of you face every day. Our legacy systems, 30 to 40 years old, few people know how to run them. changing them becomes a nightmare. And being able to, you can't even model new products onto those systems. Some policy administration systems are not able to cope with new capabilities. In addition to that, the balance. So some companies decided saying, I need to change everything. So I'm going to start with a mega program. And a lot of times those mega programs, if not clearly articulated, you spend years. One US auto insurer spent over 5 years in driving a large transformation with Guidewire as their base, saying, I want to change my contracting, I want to change my billing, I want to change my claims, I want to do this end to end. 5 years later, they realized they are 4 years behind the market. So that becomes quite important. And finally, is this idea about business and IT. We've had too long this conversation about business and IT being segregated, priorities being different. How do they come together? And in every IT conversation is somebody from your business, the product owner in that conversation. So those are the kind of challenges and complications that you are all dealing with. Now, some examples of some companies on how they started coping with these kind of things. I'll start with Prudential as an example. They noticed a very simple issue, which was the speed at which their key pages that come onto their front end for their consumers to interact with, they were rendering very, very slowly. And that was causing lower NPS, less customer interaction, no new consumers coming on board. And as we investigated this with them, it was all about the applications and the data sitting in their legacy environments not reaching the front end in time. That led to a very specific targeted program of taking some of those applications onto the AWS cloud. Once there, looking at what sort of microservices, or that is mini applications, that could be created and made available to the front end. And through that exercise, as they started modernizing, they saw some of the benefits that you can see up there. A 40% performance improvement. They saw 30% reduction in cost of servers, but most importantly, their time to market came down to 3 months. Now, that was one very small example of how they started. MetLife was a completely different story. They said, our sets of product and services, we are not able to iterate. It takes 18 months for us to create anything and put that out in the marketplace. And we've got an NPS of 1, and we've got a huge cost backbone. So there they started off by saying, we're going to look at our entire landscape, and we're going to incrementally change the components of our landscape, and through that, create a whole set of new capabilities out for our consumers. Now, they have significantly reduced cost. They have gone down from 18 months to 3 months in their time to market. And what used to take days in terms of an account process now takes a matter of minutes. So in all of this, what started becoming evident is, in order to transform your business, you've got to touch your technology. Now, it's easier said than done. That's fine. So Allianz had the same challenge, which was, I want to do this, but I'm spending a lot of money in running my environment. I don't have the money to be able to invest in doing all the lovely things that you are saying. And what they started focusing on is saying, how do I reduce my cost? How do I automate my execution of my legacy and normal activities? And therefore, gradually as I reduce that cost, can I keep investing in new capability? And as they went from a traditional environment onto that cloud, and then they started reducing their costs, as you can see, they reduced 64% in their application count, and they had 50% less incidents and breakages. And finally, therefore, they were able to start investing, and they started measuring how many innovations that they were creating and investing in. So they started self-funding their own transformation. So these are just some examples of how others have taken on this challenge. Now I'm going to put another spark into this conversation, which I found quite interesting and challenging, is DBS, a bank. A bank that said, I'm going to change the way banking is done. I want to open new markets. I can't afford brick and mortar. I don't want big buildings. So what they said, I'm going to go to a new market and I'm going to start allowing you to transact everything that you do while you have a coffee in your coffee house. So they said, you go to a coffee day, which is a coffee brand in this market, and all you do is while you're opening there, you have access to all your banking services while you are there. Not only that, they opened their architecture in such a way that you can go from your banking transaction to your automotive insurance to your claims processing in entirely one transaction. So what this demonstrated was this was opening up the entire ecosystem, but also threatening and disintermediating the role of some of the other companies, including the insurers. So I wanted to provide that story as becoming quite a disruptive play today, and it's not very difficult to be doing those things. So what's the pattern I see as clients are doing this? I think I probably see a common element out here, which is increasingly value is going to come from open innovation. And open innovation being looking at how do I create ecosystems of relationships? How do I have new products that are being created between myself and my ecosystem partners? Now, in order to do that, the common theme that you saw in those examples was you need modern applications to be able to run those modern business processes. And then, in order to run modern applications, you need a hybrid multi-cloud architecture. There are too many constraints in our existing environment, in our existing technology that needs to be addressed. Now, if you look at this in such a holistic way, you release value from many different dimensions. And what this graph out here is trying to show is you release value first on the top line is, are you genuinely generating new business? And we have seen 1 to 6% improvement in revenue, which is significant. Also, we've seen tremendous improvement in developer productivity, which means your ability to get a product out in the marketplace. And developer productivity, anywhere between 50 and 70% improvement in developer productivity. Also, that it drives unit cost reduction. So unit cost reduction between 20 and 40% is what we are seeing. And then there are two including very important dimensions, which is the cost of compliance, cost of regulation, the cost of security. And finally is what I call strategic optionality. That is the option that do I have the skills that are fungible? Do I have a no vendor lock-in? Can I evolve my environment? So those were the patterns that we were that we were observing. Now, I don't want to come across as being preachy in this, but these were just patterns that we observed that multiple other clients were experiencing. Now, when you see this, one of the big learnings I took away was right from the start, you've got to set these kind of KPIs, as you can see on the slide. You've got to set those KPIs and make them very clearly visible to your organization. Lots of times I see business programs and IT programs, fantastic words on a slide, but the hard measures are really not there. And I'll bring this hard measure idea back right at the end on my last slide. Okay, so we talked about, in order to drive that value, looking at modern applications becomes a key component. Now, we all know getting to modern applications, all of you experience, you will hear your IT departments telling you, or your own employees telling you, or your consumers telling you that it's all too complex. They are all tightly integrated. They're very old. Every time I want to analyze to do something, it takes analysts, and I call it analysis paralysis. I keep investigating till I try to find my solutions. Now, when you start seeing all of these happening, you also recognize my organization is federated. How do I allow things to happen differently in my different billing departments, in my different claims departments? How do I allow them to optimize what they need to do? So one of the main things that I'd like to call out here is at all times, I've seen successful companies say that the real purpose of modernizing is to build intelligent workflows. What I mean by that is, how do you transform an old business process? How do you embed intelligence into it and make it an intelligent workflow? Does that resonate with you? Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So, based on doing such kind of programs for a large number of clients, there are 4 get rights I'd like to call out. The 4 get rights that you should be asking your IT colleagues and your business colleagues. Number 1, are we driving our transformation based on specific, defined, clearly aware business outcomes? Is my journey anchored on those business outcomes? Number 2, do you know what your target architecture is going to look like? How do you, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Number 3, I have to accelerate my journey. At the same time, I've still got to run my business. So how do I accelerate while assuring that I am also running my current business? And finally, most importantly, is am I really changing the ways of working, the operating model, the talent in my organization, that all of this is going to be sustainable? I don't want to be relying on some other partner coming in and telling me what to do without me internally building my own capability that I can then sustain that value. So those are the 4 critical get rights I would like to call out to you. Now, I won't speak about all 4. I'll give you a glimpse of 1 or 2 and then we'll close out. So the first one that I find most important is anchoring on that business objective. And this starts quite easily. It starts by doing a couple of sprints, that is short co-creation engagements, where you bring together and say, what are those critical business capabilities that I need? To enable that capability, what applications are going to support that capability, and what needs to change there. And that's it. It starts with just creating a link between my business priority, what capability enables, what application is required to support that, and what talent do I need to make that application better. And that exercise, you can get to that clarity in anywhere between 1 and 6 weeks. So I find that quite a powerful, punchy way of getting a conversation started. So if you anchor on that, we then see a possibility of that business improvement. Now, once you've got that clarity, then deciding what sort of architecture. Now this is too detailed or a technology slide, so I'm going to simplify it. How do I segregate my infrastructure from my production systems, from my distribution systems, from my engagement systems? Are they clearly decoupled that I can actually make changes without it being a 1-year program? So that becomes the big focus of that target architecture. And you will start seeing very soon your portfolio evolving quite clearly. Your portfolio, I can hear myself. Yeah. So there's an echo somewhere. Okay. So it's not segregated. That's correct. Absolutely well said. It's quite scary when you hear yourself because it becomes a test on am I sounding okay or not. Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. As long as you can hear me, it's fine. So, yeah. What we are trying to see in this, you will start noticing, is the portfolio is shifting from old, custom, very confined applications that constrain your business processes, and now you're going to become into small, nimble solutions, and also a lot of ready-made small products that need to come into your ecosystem. Now, that whole pattern is why we then call out the different modernization options you see on the right-hand side. But this is, just to tell you that there is detail behind this is not something that you need to be initially worrying about. Now, this is, I think, where there's real value. So when you anchor yourself on the business outcomes, you then see what the target architecture needs to be. You then start saying, what needs to change in my everyday activity? And this is as simple as, how am I going to receive a request from you, the business? How am I going to process that? What's going to be automated? What skills do I need? Am I going to allow anybody to touch anything in production if my SRE or site reliability engineer has not approved it? Am I going to allow anything to happen in front of my consumer if you, the business, are not the product owner of any change that goes to my business? It is about those specific working practices that are actually easy enough to change, but you've got to know how you're going to go through and make those changes, which is why I wanted to show you this. This starts saying, as you evolve from a low maturity to high maturity enterprise in your working practices, what changes? And how should you measure that change? And at all times, we're not talking about measuring the change and saying, tomorrow you and I will work together. We never used to work together. Oh, great, that's fantastic. No, you and I now work together. What is the value that has resulted in? It's resulted in there is no more delay in decision making. I come across something, I innovate on it, I show it to you, you approve, I get it out there into the marketplace, and we make incremental adjustments because our consumers also do not want too much change management at the same time. And that is measured in each of these. When was the last time you delivered a code that was successful, that went out to a consumer on their application or on their website that took less than 2 months to get there? And it measures those kind of things. It measures all of this on, is it impacting my revenue? Is it reducing my cost? Is it reducing my cost of compliance? And is it not tying me down like my legacy used to tie me down? So that's why I believe this operating model piece is easy, but probably, the steps are easy, but it's probably the single biggest impact inside the organization. So, now, I've shared with you some of our perspectives. Now, I've also got an audience out here. I'm from IBM. I need to tell you a little bit about what IBM can also do. So I'll take one page on a little bit about what IBM can bring to the table to help you on this journey. And the idea out here is about assets and expertise. The idea that we have insurance industry experts along with challenger industry experts to come into your conversation and help you understand how you can prioritize, where should you focus, where you should not focus. So that kind of skill and capability. Data and AI experts who work with you to create the right insights, but at all times that IP remains yours. As we develop, we've done these cloud journeys, multiple of them, and through that there are patterns that are defined. For every piece of technology going from place A to place B, there is a pattern defined. You know exactly what to do. You wake up in the morning, you say good morning, you brush your teeth, you wash your face, you have a shower, you're dressed. Exactly the same way. How do you take the application? How do you open the application? How do you transfer it? How do you test it? How do you see the value that happens in front of a consumer? All those steps being defined. And we do this, so even though I am from IBM, but we are from IBM Consulting that actually works on all technology platforms, and therefore we are agnostic to any kind of, we're not limited to IBM's own hardware or software capabilities. So I wanted to bring this up to you. And then my final piece, which is getting started. It sounds big, it sounds a lot, but the idea is actually these journeys are not very difficult to get started with. These journeys can start with workshops that are between 1 and 2 weeks that look at what priority, what application, what talent, and that's it. And in the priority, of course, you look at business objective and your cost profile. And within a matter of 2 weeks, you can create a 2-pager profile of what you want to try and achieve. You then spend 2 to 6 weeks trying to figure out what are the different roadmap elements. At the end of 6 weeks, you should be able to go to your board and say, that's the route I want to go on to. That's what it's going to enable. And that's my revenue profile. That's my cost profile. That's the kind of partnership I want to help me enable that journey. And then you start on and execute upon that journey in incremental chunks. So, we spoke about the digital insurer. We talked about NPS. We talked about premium growth. We talked about cost. We talked about few examples on how they started small or how they started with complex platforms. We said that there are 4 get rights: aligning to business objectives, the right target architecture, having the right accelerator and tools and therefore the right partner on your journey, and the operating model. And then it involves value, which is always measure those outcomes into what's my top line impact, what's my developer productivity impact, what's my unit cost impact, and am I always having strategic optionality. So I hope this was useful to you. Was I on time? I don't know.
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay.
Very good presentation.
Okay.
Franco.
Si sente, sì. Well, first of all, thank you very much. You have been sharp and straight to the point. We have seen, they advised me just 5 minutes before you've been talking, that there have been hundreds of people putting like for the speech I come to be. So, thank you. This is an aspect. We have the best insurance companies going, talking to these rendezvous. 2 or 3, 4 big Italian banks. So I hope that your speech goes straight to the point.
Okay.
And complimenti, because you are a very good speaker.
Well,
very
thank you.
So. No, you're
thank
welcome.
you.
Really?
Pass the word to the old boss over there.
No, can you? What do you think about the cyber risk in the cloud services? Is growing risk? What in which manner is possible to manage?
It's interesting. Actually, we have become a little more secure with the transformation we are making towards the cloud. Interestingly, I'll take 2 dimensions to this. One is security and one is cyber risk. So this is the chief security officer at Lloyd's Bank. And he was talking about saying, when I go to the regulators and I talk to them, I have to first explain to them the security in this legacy environment. Then I have to tell them why that is secure. Then I have to show them the security in this environment and why that is secure. And I have to tell them about my third environment, because each one of them is very different. It's all different ages and different people are using that. And the biggest concern the security regulator has got is, but there's no consistency. How do you know you're going to make mistakes? How do you measure that? And he said, by that open hybrid cloud architecture, I create transparency, a single view of that security risk, and inside my core platform, I build in security practices and telemetry that allows me to work that. And there are companies that support that with SOC centers and security operations centers around the world. So I think today's world is that concern about cybersecurity, whilst that exists because the world has become much more open, there is enough technology that says that risk should not hold you back from being able to transform your business capability.
Understand. Perfect. Well,
any questions?
Any question?
And also any feedback. If this worked for you, let me know. If it did not work for you, let me know, because it's extremely important for me to learn whether these messages are resonating with you or not. Excellent.